Hi guys, in this overview I want to talk about planning for success. So I suppose I didn't want this video to be like the Big I Am show, and the only reason that I'm using I a lot is because I had to kind of create this personal, this planning for success against my own growth, and how I overcome certain obstacles. So if I use I, it's not because I just want to talk about myself, it's just that's the only point of reference that I really have in order to talk about and add some granularity and some flavour to this document, and to maybe give like a bit more context, I suppose. All right. So, like, I was a former soldier and police officer. I had very bullish, I suppose, attitudes to getting shit done, right? Which would be as a soldier, as being like a very competitive physical training instructor. It's like, okay, I want to run like faster than anybody else, so I just do twice as much exercise as anybody else. As a result, like, my body has to catch up, and then yes, my energy systems are better, and then I win the race. Now, there's a certain, like, once you leave like that environment, like, the rules for the games change. So when I left I still carried that mentality through when running like relatively small businesses like gyms, outside of the army, and it worked for a time. But like, what happens is that attitude to just overcompensate in energy for strategy just causes burnout, because there's just too many things, too many factors thrown in, and like, sometimes, yes, you can work 16-hour days for a while, but after doing it, you just have to change your strategy, otherwise you just burn out. Okay, and that's really what happened for me. Um, and this is how I had to learn in order to change my strategy in order to become able to manage in a busy environment where I had to use my brain, quite more than I had to just use my body, because like mental work, just doing these videos like I'm doing now can be far more draining than going out for like a 6 mile, 10 mile, 20-mile jog, believe it or not, or run, or whatever I used to do. So first thing I want to talk about, guys, is doing like a vision statement. Now the vision statement is basically, first things first, do a values elicitation. So there's going to be an exercise with one of my clients, Josh, and basically we did a values elicitation to work out like what his high level values are, like what's the things that makes him tick. Okay, so for me personally, it's like love, connection, peace, creativity, security, connection, if I didn't already say that. But those are the things that make me tick, okay? And that knowing those allowed me to create like a future state, like a 12 months and 3 years down the line, where I would just intuitively write what my life would look like if I was to live in alignment with those values. And these are the categories here that I'm highlighting that would make me feel like, yeah, do you know what? If that was happening in that facet of my life, that's success. So, like, what would we do next? Next, we would do like a visualization of self. So, not only we talk to our subconscious and saying, like, how would I write my future? This is what my future would look like, okay? So, I've written or done a number of vision boards, but all of them that I've done have manifested. So this one is probably fairly recent, where this is a picture of me with my son, picture of me back in the day when I was shredded, picture of me living life doing a coaching call, picture of me looking trim, looking smart, looking professional, yeah. And all of these things, they bleed into the decisions I make on a daily basis, and as a result, they manifest. And like in the background, there's like a beautiful sunny skyline, all the rest of it. Certainly not in Belfast, but it means I holiday a lot to these sort of destinations, so I can get that. Okay, so these are super important to have about the place and in a position of prominence, so that they'd always become part of your decision making process on a daily basis. So personal principles, basically these are straight from Stephen R. Covey, and like, what are the things that you abide by on a daily basis, and that you grade yourself on a weekly basis. So the grading thing is something I do personally, because it allows me to know whether my standards are slipping or not. Okay, so if I wanted to use my Action Remarkable tool to do a live grading of myself this week, and to be honest, completely transparent, this is the second time I'm doing this video, because my Vidyard crashed, and I was able to do it on the last one, but it's not letting me this time. So what I could do is I will grade myself using this here. Okay. And these are still the principles I work on a weekly basis. This is me grading myself now. So in terms of my health, 7 out of 10. I've eaten well. I've dropped a little bit of weight this week. I feel shredded. I look the business. No, I don't. I won't say I look the business, but I've upheld. Like I've done my weights, I've done my cardio, I've done my training. Yeah. In terms of my fitness and health actually mold into one nowadays. My parenthood, 7 out of 10. I've had great times with my son this week, and I'm planning to have one this afternoon. In terms of value, I feel like I've contributed to the team, I've contributed to the business, I've contributed to my own business. I feel like that's probably even an 8 this week, to be honest with you. Consistency, like, have I, followed my calendar, my Evernote, and the rest of it? Yes, I have. I'll grade myself a 7. In terms of habits have changed now for me to honesty. So I felt like that was just something that would really dial things in for me. And I can say it's going to be a 6 this week because I had an awkward conversation. I had quite a short conversation with somebody who sees me as a bit of a leader figure, and I need to have some, I need to make amends with that. So I'm going to grade myself a 6 there. In terms of acceptance, if the world fell apart tomorrow in terms of my business, how would I feel? I feel all right. Yeah, so I'm like a 7 out of 10. All right. Respect. Am I showing the people who pay me money respect? I can honestly say yes, I am. Personal growth. Okay, so I would say, what am I at? I'd say like a 7 because I'm here on a Saturday afternoon working towards my project, yeah, of putting this portal together. So I'd say I'm at a 7, maybe even an 8, and encouraging others. Because I had that conversation that was a bit short with somebody who holds me in esteem, I'm going to grade myself as a 6. And knowing that I grade myself as 6 knows I need to make amends. All right? So unwritten contracts, guys, with yourselves and others. If you're experiencing stress right now, there could be a possibility that you've got an unwritten sort of rule that you have in life with yourself or other people that's old and outdated. So let me give you a couple of examples, right? Well, unwritten contract with yourself, and this is one that's I used to have, is that if somebody gives me a piece of work, I need to do it within 24 hours, otherwise I'm not fulfilling my value to them. I don't know where that came from, but as my workload increased, I couldn't get the work I needed to do done within 24 hours, even if it meant working 12, 14, 16-hour days, which means that this whole bit of programming was broken. I had to just navigate that with myself, communicate with the people giving me the work and say, is it possible to stretch out the deadlines? And they were like, yeah, of course. What's the big problem? And I created this problem for myself, yeah? So there's unwritten contracts you have about, the way that you act, the way that you negotiate and navigate life. And you might find that if you're stressed, you might need to look at that. So unwritten contracts with other people could be a fact of you might have certain values like punctuality, communication, work, how you add value to other people and things like that. Now you might be in a working relationship with somebody who doesn't have values of, say, punctuality or, working extreme hours or whatever it may be. And you have this unwritten contract that when me and you work together or me and you have a relationship, you would adhere to my values. And if they're not adhering to your values, that can cause stress. But of course, this is all going on in your head because you've created those values yourself. So if you're causing, and this happens a lot with relationships, so have a little look and ask yourself, what unwritten contracts have you got in place? And how do you need to maybe have set boundaries or have an open conversation or set I suppose, put measures in place from a pragmatic standpoint so that you can help yourself, with these unwritten contracts. So next, is balancing your life out according to your human needs. So you've got what's called 200, 300, and 400 energy. 200 energy is of the body, 300 energy is of the social side of life, and 400 energy is more the intellectual side of things. So out of those, hours whereby, which I'll talk about in a minute, you've got 8 hours of non-work, 8 hours of work, and 8 hours of sleep. Of these 8 hours of non-work, how much of your life is 200 energy, how much is 300, how much is 400? So I'm very much a case of I neglect my 300 energy, which is my social energy. I'm in a coffee shop right now. I've said 2 words to people where I could just stop, just chin wag, have a conversation with people and just shoot the breeze a little bit, but I don't choose to do it. I go to the gym, but I have my headphones in. So I need to really look at my 300 energy and ask myself, like, what could I be doing differently? 200 energy is like exercise, you know, meditation, sex, human contact, and things like that. 400 energy is like your personal development. So for me, like, it's my 300 is really missing. Okay, and I'm a bit light on the 200, and my 400 is probably on point. So ask yourself, like, is my life of balance? And this is a good way of, of, of really sort of identifying where your life's out of balance. Nextly is time compartmentalization. So this is what I talk about. Guys, with your calendars, I would recommend you have 8 hours of work, 8 hours of non-work, and 8 hours of sleep. Nice and balanced, all right? You can possibly push the work out a little bit, okay? But just be mindful that, you know, 8, 9, 10, possibly hours, yes. Anything more than that, guys, you're probably if you expand the stretch of time, you're probably going to start to burn out. But by limiting your hours, what that will do is that you'll actually deliver to a higher standard, because you give yourself self-imposed deadlines, and you'll only do what's important. And with those deadlines, you'll work that a little bit harder, because if you say, like, I'm just going to work all day today, you're going to make the volume of work you've got to do stretch out all day, and then you don't get any free time because you're doing this kind of shitty, middle of the road, just cruising sort of thing. Yeah? And then you go straight to bed and your life's right out of balance. Okay, so what's next? Do a time inventory. I wish my Remarkable 2 was working here, because I really wanted to touch on it. But essentially what happened was, guys, is I divided my life. When my life was super busy and disorganized, I decided, like, what are the 3 columns of main work that I have? And it was admin, call reviews, and coaching. And what I did then is, like, I looked over the last month, and I said, and went by week, and I identified in 30-minute components, like, how much coaching, how much admin, and how much call reviews I was doing. I thought I was working 70-hour weeks or more. I had a shock to the system when I realized, and I did these tallies from my actual calendar, that I was only working like 35. And what I did then is I looked and I prioritized these admin tasks on a scale of 1 to 10, these coaching tasks on a scale of 1 to 10, these call review tasks on a scale of 1 to 10. And I said, like, what I really investigated, like, what is like a, what's like a 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, and what's a 4, 3, 2, 1. And I just said, like, do I really need to do these 4, 3, 2, 1s? How can I economize? How can I optimize? Or can I offload? What can I do differently? And what happened then, the following week, I only worked 35 hours, and I actually felt really guilty, because like, I'd economized my time so much during that worthy exercise, that like, I was literally had vast hours during the day where I just didn't have anything to do. It was like, whoa, it's kind of cool, but it's a little weird. I felt a little bit guilty as well. So an upper limit problem, guys, is basically when you don't realize, you haven't really made an agreement with yourself what a good week looks like, and you start doing things like, I just want to do something, I just want to do one more video, one more role play, one more objection handling procedure, blah blah blah. And what happens then is, you haven't negotiated with yourself, look, if I do this, is this enough? If I do more, is that too much? And as a result, you don't know where that line is, and you keep bleeding out your work into your free time, and you start to feel like you're on a treadmill and you burn out. It probably ties in with a dopamine addiction, which I'll be talking about in a different video. But just switch on to yourself and ask yourself, like, why am I always on the go, on the go, on the go? Okay, you need to, well, I would recommend, like I do, which I have to do myself, is put like hard friction in place, whereby I delete apps off my phone. I only do work in certain spaces of my home and things like that, or like certain places, certain coffee shops I do work in, others I'll go to relax and things like that. Okay. So monthly, weekly outcomes. So to cut a long story short, we need to know our figures, and we need to know our numbers. So this is just a case in point for a gentleman that I work with. He wanted to make £1,500 per month, which is going to cover half of his base operating expense, his living expenses, because he didn't want to feel dependent on inbound leads. All right. So what would that look like? £1,500, when we did our numbers, would be 5 sales, his average commission rate. Those 5 sales would mean 11 shown at 45% close rate, and 11 appointments would mean 25 book calls at a 50% close rate. 22 booked appointments with 88 conversations at a 25% through rate, and 888 dials at a 10% pickup rate. Over 24 working days in the week, so you used to work Saturdays as well, that's 35 outbounds per day. All right. So knowing your numbers, knowing that you've got 8 hours of work to do, knowing that, what are the key things that you do during the day to generate the money generating activities, you can now plan out like what you need to do in order to know your figures. So that's quite a simple example, but I can do a video on that as well if you guys wanted. Just drop us a wee Facebook message. All right. So then what does a successful week look like? All right, so if you take in all of the different videos like planning for success, the good body guide, the closer feedback system, and things like that, your week is going to look like, a vision statement, personal principles, visualization, balanced off life, your balanced non-work life, compartmentalized day, appropriate inbound and self-gen activity, getting a feedback, having a feedback system in place as part and exercising 3 times a week. Okay. Now this is a recommendation, like what you should do: start of the week, and then start of day. So all of those different activities, which ones need to be done weekly, which ones need to be done daily. And this isn't too far off like what my actual working day looks like. All right. Well, if I was doing sales calls, but I do more call reviews and coaching now rather than that. And this would be like kind of what my diary would look like. Right. So yeah, to summarize, guys, if you're at a space, you probably picked up on some of these, or you could even be more advanced than me, or you could be totally in the weeds. And if you are in the weeds, like really slow down and start to put these structures in place, because generally the more successful you become, the more responsibility you have, the busier you become, the more people lean on you, the more people want your services. And outdated systems just cannot, I'm working with a client at the moment. He's watching this, he'll know who it is. And like, he's absolutely skyrocketed in terms, because of his own personal development, because of his desire to invest in other people. And he's in a place of responsibility now. And like, hard work just won't cut it. There's certain things to be done. There's not enough hours in a day. He's not giving himself enough of a balanced life, and he's just burning out. Again, so that will happen. Like, if you're committed to change, if you're committed to becoming a good sales rep, people will lean on you as you get more experienced and more reliable and more dependable to generate money. And so you've got to start putting these principles in place. So if you haven't yet, why not put them in advance? Because then you'll have to scale without a headache. Like, scale your life without a headache, I should say. All right, guys, I hope that was useful, and speak to you again soon.